And here we are, everyone. Another Perfect 10 episode. Hey, oh, we are celebrating our 10th anniversary here on the Spoiler Room. And we're looking at films from 2013 for this special series. You get one a month. And this month, well, last month, Ian spun the wheel. And we got Under the Skin, which launched Skin Flicks Month, which is what we're in the middle of here. And yes, we are looking at 2013's Under the Skin from A24. And with me tonight is my co-host, right-hand man, and the man who just keeps coming back for more is none other than Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm very curious to see what you think after having watched this movie again, because man, I've got some thoughts. Spoiler: I still love this movie. It's just I haven't talked about it in 10 years.
Well, I'm looking forward to our discussion. And Kara should be joining us soon. She's going to try to make it. Hopefully, she can. So,
Cool.
again, folks, thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink. I have a new favorite drink, possibly. Drink Wisconsinably has come out with damn good brandy old fashions. That's right. It is canned brandy old fashions. Now, I'm not a huge brandy old fashioned, though that is the state drink. Uh, not just any alcoholic beverage. Wisconsin has an official state drink as well, and it is the brandy old fashioned. And we were at a event last weekend, a little tangent first, folks, called Uncork Me. I was helping my wife promoting the winery she works at. We were pouring wine and all that. Well, we happened to be put next to the Drink Wisconsinably tent, and the gentleman there pulled out a 4-pack of these, and I go, "Oh my, what is that?" And he goes, "Have you had?" I'm like, "I'm not really a brandy. Here, try this." So I tried it, and oh my lord, if you like brandy old fashions, folks, drink Wisconsinably's damn good brandy old fashioned is pretty damn good. So, and I'm not sponsored or anything. I'm just telling you that because it's tasty.
Look, I am not by any stretch of the imagination an alcohol drinker, but I am going to see if Drink Wisconsinably has T-shirts because I would wear that. I love that name.
It's a wonderful name. They've been around for a while. And yeah, apparently I was talking to the guy. He said they've been developing this for about a year, and it is smooth and dangerous, and yeah, it's tasty. So, and there she is. I said she would be here, and look at that. She appeared. It is none other than Kara from the Horror Retrospective. How you doing, Kara?
Doing all right. Glad I made it. I was logging in and I was like, where'd I put my avatar?
Well, I'm sure Ian's happy that you made it too, because for our 2013
Always.
Perfect 10 episode, you get to do the synopsis, Kara, of Under the Skin, or try to anyway.
I'm going to buy you a couple of seconds though, Kara, just to say that if you want, folks, you can buy Drink Wisconsinably T-shirts. I just found this online.
That's right.
A variety of
got a-
different colors, and I
they've
guess it's
got
a pub too. Yeah.
They've got a whole website. They're a wonderful. It's a wonderful. Yeah, it's Wisconsin. Hey oh, so there we go.
Now I wish I had read the synopsis.
If not, if you don't want to do it, that's okay. Ian can do it, or I'll even do it. We could read it off of IMDb too. I don't want you to
I mean, the best I can come up with is we have a beautiful alien man snatcher who likes to drown men under glass, and then she realizes that she's not what she thinks she is, and my dog doesn't like that for some reason.
Perfect.
That's actually quite it. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the gist of it. Is Scarlett Johansson is playing the female, as it is titled. That's all, just the female. And there's another person here, the bad man. That's what they're called, the female and the bad man. And yes, the female goes out and lures men to their doom, basically. Uh, all through minimalistic dialogue, Very interesting soundtrack, and yeah, I'm interested to get your initial thoughts, both of you, and then we'll kind of dive into this film. Again, this is a revisit, folks. We did cover this film about 8 years ago here in the spoiler room with a completely different crew. So I'm interested to see what my crew here were interested, if they liked it, hated it, if they're never coming back because this film, what the hell, Mark? So first we'll start with Kara. Kara, your initial feelings with this. Do you remember when you first saw it?
I originally watched this back in 2014, so this was my
Mhm.
my revisit, and the first time I watched it, I was just thinking, what the devil is this?
It it's different. It's
It is, but I feel like I understood it a little bit better this second time. Like what I noticed this second time, and I think is she, when she doesn't know what she is, she follows a script more or less, and
Mhm.
she converses, and she at least she communicates better after she kind of comes out of that, and she realizes, and it's more like after the disfigured man is rejected. I think that's kind of when she snaps out of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll definitely get into some of that because I there were some things that I noticed this time around that I didn't quite notice last time around. I don't think I didn't get a chance to look at my previous episode. It's been a while since I've watched this too, so I I don't know what I thought on the previous episode. So this will be fun. Uh, Ian, your initial thoughts with this when you first saw it?
Well, this was one of my top films of 2013.
Mhm.
I was in love with Under the Skin and incredibly jealous of my friend and former co-host on Kicking the Seat, Graham, because he got to see an early screening of this with director Jonathan Glazer, like doing a Q&A afterwards. And so I think he came back from that like raving about it to me and our other co-host Matt. And so we checked it out and yeah, just astonished. I yeah, it was unlike as the trailers say, it was unlike anything I'd seen before. And revisiting it now, uh, yeah, I think it still holds up. Some things I picked up on that I had kind of missed before. Other things I was a little bit hazy. I'm like, did I understand this better 10 years ago? I don't know. But one thing that is consistent, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, is the beach scene.
Oh
10
yeah.
years ago really messed me up. I think because I was, my kid was probably 2.5, but it's one of those things that, watching it even today, because I've got, two kids now, that scene really ate me up. I felt disgusted. I felt nauseous. I mean, not that I had like a moral problem with what I was seeing, but just
Mhm.
that, Glazer and the screen, because he didn't write this. It was
It was
who
based off
wrote
of a
this?
book
Right.
too. Yeah.
Well, okay. He co-wrote the screenplay. It was based on a book, I think, by Walter Campbell, if I have that right.
Mhm. Yeah.
But there is something so primal about the way that scene was handled and the female's reaction or non-reaction to it, and then the bad man. I mean, I think it's kind of probably how he got his name. The bad man. He's just kind of the cleanup guy for this alien lady,
Yeah.
and is so singular minded that he'll leave a 16-month-old or an 18-month-old out on a beach in the middle of the night with crashing waves. Wow. So yeah, this movie really got to me, and it still has that power 10 years on.
Yeah, when I watched it, when I first watched it, I was taken aback. I was like, "Wow, this is." It was. I mean, we're talking 10 years ago. I mean, now we know A24, but A24 had only been around a year. They had done Spring Breakers. I was looking it up. They had a wild first year of distribution, and this was one of the films they did in their first year. And they basically, and they still do that today. They're bringing kind of these different indie art house type picks to the big screen, to more screens, which is awesome. Whether or not you like them or not, it's awesome we're getting other cinema like this.
Hmm.
And I didn't see this in the theater, but I did rent it. I'm like, wow. And then I watched it again for our show. And also this is the third time viewing it. Um And yeah, this film, it does. I love films with minimal dialogue that still are able to tell a story through actions and scenes and that. I those always kind of appeal to me a bit. And they're not always done well, but when they are, they're really great. You know, where there's minimal or no dialogue, really, because it relies on the actors. It's kind of like theater, stage play almost, because they have to pantomime in that. And you're right, Kara. Our the woman.
Mhm.
Um, I noticed a lot more this time with her progression, and it's definitely she's a drone, is what she is, folks. In many ways, she's a drone. She's not actually intended to have sex with any of the guys that she
Yeah.
brings back, right?
But I do notice she gets progressively more naked every single time she brings the guy back.
Well,
Not that I'm complaining, she has a nice shape.
well, and they talked to her about it. She said she weighed whether or not she would, being the actress that she was, because this is just when she started appearing. I think what Iron Man was just a year before this or after,
Avengers.
or Avengers. Yeah,
Yeah, because that Avengers was 2012.
right. Iron Man
Yeah.
2 she was in as well.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, she was kind of becoming a name. I guess it took them like 10 years to make this movie, actually. So I think they shot a lot of her parts maybe before she was bigger name, which makes sense with the way they do some things in this film.
Well, it's funny you say that, Mark, because she was already a really big name before she was even involved in the Marvel
True.
universe. It's just that she was an indie darling. She
Right.
started off in Ghost World.
Hmm.
I mean, she was in other stuff too, but she was in Ghost World, Lost in Translation, which was I think
Hmm.
2005. So she was kind of around. I think that's why a lot of people got excited. It's kind of like what happened with Elizabeth Olsen later on when she
Hmm.
became Scarlet Witch. People were like, oh my God, she's going from doing these indie films to stepping
Yeah,
into the Marvel arena. It's what's going to happen with Mia Goth. I hate to say thank God for the writer's strike, but if it means we don't have to see her subjected to being in Blade,
oh,
I'll just let that non sequitur sit. But anyway, yes, back to Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, she's terrific, and yeah, I think that was kind of one of the appeals of this is people always kind of wondered, and yes, she does get, I'll call it spectacularly naked in this movie, but artfully so. It's not,
Well, it,
yeah.
that's why I wanted to get Kara's opinion, because we're just two guys here, and it is her character gets naked, but it's funny they call this an erotic thriller, but there's
I
no.
don't see that at all.
Thank you,
mm-mm.
because the nudity. Would you say, Kara? There's nothing really erotic or supposed to be titillating about
No,
her
I mean
getting.
it just is like it's part of the story, but there's really no focus. There's nothing sexy. I mean, she's not really enticing these men. She's luring them, but I mean, all that you really hear is, "Do you think I'm pretty?" And all you really see is like some guy touching her face and her neck, and it really doesn't go beyond that, other than that one scene where she kind of closes her eyes, and the guy eventually clicks and it's like, "Oh, you want me to kiss you?"
Well, I mean, I think there is a lot of eroticism in the movie, mostly in terms of the way that she presents herself to lure these guys in. She's in her underwear a lot. At one point,
Mhm.
she's pretty naked, and there is a sensuality to the way that she moves her body. She's kind of like writhing,
Mhm.
almost like a snake, to draw these men into this black room. What's fascinating, though, is that it it straddles that line of objectification, but if you turn it around to the conventional idea of objectifying, the naked female form, you got to turn that around and see like what's going on with the guys, because there's a lot of male nudity in this movie, but
Mhm.
it's not like you've got Jason Momoa,
No.
stripping down and go. They're all like these scrawny, pale little Scottish, club creatures, and they're
Yeah.
just they're not to say that they're all scummy, but they're all
Average
scrawny and
guy.
unattractive, yeah. They're everymen, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're average guys. I mean, it's not like you want to check them out and, pull out like a tape measure or anything.
though
Right.
you could with at least the first two victims, because they're walking along into the water, and yeah, they're y- the female is her wiles are working on them. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
I mean,
I'm surprised the first guy didn't pole vault out of that water. What?
but I do think it's neat how they stay under the. I still want to call it like glass. I mean, I think it's neat how he kind of stays under that water stasis, and they kind of deteriorate gradually, but they don't drown. They just kind of age, and then he sort of imploded and became like this weird, like burnt up, kind of like papery weird thing.
Yeah. Well, it's eating them from the inside is what it seems to be doing. And at one point we don't get to see the POV of the victim till the third one, till the
Mm-hmm.
third guy. We're not quite sure what's going on with this black water. In fact, the first victim we don't even see. The first victim, what happens to him? He's in the car. She's like, kind of, looks at him and gives her little smile or whatnot. And then all of a sudden we cut and he's not in the passenger seat anymore. I love that bit. I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just assumed like the first time, even this time, because I didn't really remember the
Mhm.
film all that well. I was just kind of like, oh, he got dropped off.
Well, he did. Yeah, a matter of speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was already out there. Uh,
Yeah,
it-
it's just funny to me. Like she has this programming, she has it down to a T. I mean, and she plays the part well. I mean,
mhm.
okay, she's a drone. It's just in my mind, I was just like, okay, well, she's an alien, which I guess technically she is. She's this unknown being.
Right. I mean, I do like that there are no answers.
Mhm.
There's no scientist coming in to explain like, oh, we found this burnt up alien corpse. Spoiler, and this is what
Yeah.
this means, and we've been tracking these creatures, for 50 years. It's all a complete mystery at the end, but you get just enough of a glimpse to understand that whoever wrote this movie and directed it, they probably had an entire backstory of how this whole thing works because it's got a whole system
It
to it.
does.
Yeah.
From the dark, the portal, like you walk into an apartment and it's like you're walking into it's almost like Phantasm when
Yeah.
they in the mausoleum, when they go through the two metal poles, they're in that other dimension. It doesn't make any
Mhm.
sense, but it's kind of like we're dealing with here. Yeah, I love the mystery of it. Like when the one guy, we follow him down under the water and we see him kind of making contact with that other guy, and he pops. I jumped because I'd forgotten what
I did
happened, but I was
too.
like, oh my
I
God,
did too.
creepy as hell.
Well,
Well, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, when we have that crash at the beginning, and as you say, the bad man, he fetches her, but it's the same model. And the female, strips her clothes and takes on that persona, but we see that her eyes tear. So it makes me wonder if they have this loop where they eventually come into knowing because she cried, like she showed some sense of emotion or some sense of knowing.
Well, it
Huh.
evolves. Her character evolves
Hmm.
when we were first introduced to her. Like the first three victims, I would say the first half, because there's only a body count of 6 in this
Hmm.
altogether. Her first 3 victims, she's like, she seems to be going kind of about her business. But yeah, she's evolving as she keeps hanging around people, which is an interesting message or metaphor, whatever you want to call it. I'm not that versed in film school. I apologize, folks. But a metaphor or allegory, whatever you want to call it, is that her character is made to just not feel. And what we
Hmm.
learn later really is not meant to ever have actual coitus with these victims,
Yeah.
because of what happens later when she breaks away from whatever the mother room or whatever you want to call it. um you know but when she starts out, she's more robotic, and it goes along with what you're saying, Kara. and I noticed it more this time than the first time I saw this, I think, is whenever she's talked to, she doesn't respond back right away. But
Mm.
Scarlett Johansson does this very subtle thing, like her eyes don't really move or anything, but she's just sitting there like she's thinking of how to properly respond to who's talking to her in the best way to get this person to go with her. And she does an inquiry as well. Are you together with someone? Are you alone?
Yeah.
Are you know and she smiles, but she doesn't have like any expression. She doesn't move. It's like she's processing it. She's like, oh, it's sort of like, I will use this method.
Well, and when something doesn't work out, like I think it was the guy, one of the people that she runs into who's like kind of on the street while she's driving. She's kind
Yeah.
of asking him questions, getting a little bit flirtatious, but then she realizes that he's going off with someone, and she immediately snaps from that kind of like flirtatiousness to dead-eyed stare, and she's already like driving away.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting what you say, Mark, because her reaction when she's trying to like compute what she's going, how she's going to react, it reminds me of the Terminator.
Mhm.
When Arnold is, the T-800, we're seeing the point of view of what his eyes are seeing, that
Mhm.
readout, and the fuck you asshole.
Yeah.
It's almost like if we were to be watching what that looks like from the outside, he's probably just sitting there staring off into space, much like she is in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, she's very much like a robot, even though she's completely organic. Which we get this opening, this Terrence Malick opening of them. You figure, yeah, Ian knows what I'm talking about.
No, this is not a Terrence Malick opening, because it's way
Or-
too short for that.
Oh,
It's,
okay. I'm
it's
sorry.
only a
Yeah.
couple of minutes. It's not
It's
15.
yeah. Where it's basically, you get the impression she's either being made or transported, because you get this core and this circle of light, and suddenly we get to her eye, and it looks like her eye, and then we see ScarJo, being the drone. So yeah, for her first three, but it's weird how things suddenly take a turn. It's almost when she gets jumped, the van that she's in gets jumped by hooligans,
Mhm.
I think, is what suddenly is the start of the turning. Am I off on that car, or is that where she starts to break and like change?
For me, I noticed it when the one guy was rejected. I didn't really get it when the
Mhm.
car was attacked, because she still sat there like she was trying to figure out what was going on.
Mhm.
And my thought was like, why are you still sitting there?
Yeah, that's true. You're right. When the one guy is rejected, um, she, but it's also like she's just, when she gets the rose later on in traffic from a random guy,
Yeah.
it's like she didn't know how to process that, because this
No, she
is,
didn't. Yeah.
this is some random guy she didn't talk to or turn on her flirt mode, who just gave her a rose, and that started her thinking as well. It's really interesting to see the progression of her character.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's because that's the thing. Like, this person was in another car, like a few lanes over, and he had just had the rose peddler who's like walking around in traffic selling flowers car to car give her one. It's kind of like, yeah, send this drink to the lady across the bar. But there was no way for her to act on that, flirtation. I don't think it's so much that he made the first move. It's just that you're right, Mark. She doesn't know how to process it because she's kind of stuck. Like, what do I do with this information? It's not a straight up seduction. Plus,
Mhm.
she's not really in control. It's kind of like towards the end with the last guy that she meets, second to last guy that she meets, the last nice person that she meets.
Yeah.
She is so used to going out and finding these men and bringing them back to her place that when she is approached and she's sort of away from her, headquarters or whatever you want to call it, and he is inviting her into his place and kind of showing her, tenderness, and they go and they walk through this castle, and they watch TV together, and eventually they get intimate. I don't think she was expecting any of that. it's interesting that we never see like his real reaction to any of that. He's very much confused, but she runs out of the house and into the woods. But yeah, it's like this whole new thing where she completely loses control of the situation. And then in the next encounter that she has, she loses all control of the situation when she's, sexually assaulted and, molested as she's, passed out. It's weird because I felt really sad for her, even though she's just this, black skin template drone alien character, because she just had the worst possible ending you could have, no matter what species you are.
Mhm.
Yeah, she does. This is Hey, Cara, what'd you think of the progression and what they do with her character?
I mean, I was kind of curious about it because that's kind of just going back to the rejected guy. That's I'm still stuck on that, but I mean that's kind of like when she woke up and she starts exploring like herself. She looks at herself and she's like, "What am I?"
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
and I'm still on like, well, what really woke up that curiosity? Like she starts like actually looking at herself because she had always gotten down to her underwear and she was nude, but she never like actually looked at her own reflection. Like that was the first time, like when the guy fled, she caught her own reflection in that stairwell, and she looked at herself. Like I guess that was like she had seen her reflection in a mirror before when she was applying makeup, but like that's the first time she ever really seemed to pay attention.
Well, I think she would, and it is a bit ambiguous too, but I think there's some connection between that guy who had the physical deformity, his face was, massively deformed. I think there were tumors of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And she picks him up and everything, and they have a conversation. And it's the first time that he's really been with someone, or you get the feeling that he's ever had a woman give him the time of day, much less show like real affection. And there's that almost confusion because I don't know, as a space alien, especially what she looks like under the skin. She
Yeah.
probably doesn't understand what it looks like. That she doesn't know that she's Scarlett Johansson. Like she's a 10 out of 10
Yeah.
knockout attractive person, as she encounters this guy who's really lonely, who's been apparently rejected because he's quote unquote ugly. She probably doesn't understand that. And so when she's looking at herself in the mirror, she's probably having some kind of a self-actualization, like, am I attractive? Why do I have such luck with, pulling people in, and this other person who's very kind is rejected by, society. He's not a scumbag.
Well,
Like I guess she noticed the difference in like his physique compared to hers. Like I guess she never really noticed everyone else looked different compared to him because she didn't react like when she looked at him versus everybody else. To him,
Well,
he was just another potential to bring back to the cave.
right, and that's sort of my point, is that in that conversation, I think she picks up on the fact that he's been kind of outcast because of the way he looks,
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't quite understand what does that mean. You look like everybody else I've ever
Mhm.
encountered, even though he doesn't, very clearly. But also there is there's a lack of aggression. I mean,
Mhm.
some of the people that she picks up, you get the feeling are just, nice, lonely guys. Some of them are creeps, but they all seem to want, you know, to get into her pants.
Yeah.
It's unclear that this guy, he might want that, but there's also, it seems like it's coming from a genuine place of interest and love and need. So maybe she was picking up on, maybe she let him escape because for whatever she's doing on Earth with these men, because you notice she never goes after women.
Mhm.
There is an extended sequence, a montage when she's out on the city street, where we are treated to a couple of minutes of shots of mostly women who are either very young, middle aged, or old, not the age range that she is going out and seeking. I don't know what that exactly means or what the filmmakers are trying to tell us. They're definitely trying to say something.
Well, I think it's part of her realization because we get that part and then we get the overlay of people over her face, this kind of overlay of more and more people, like she's awakening to the world around her, because up until that point, she was pretty much laser focused on find a guy, find out if they're alone so they're not going to be missed, bring them back to get munched. That's it. That's her whole, that's all she focused on. And I was thinking back to the mirror scene that you're talking about, because there's a mirror at the end of the staircase that I think is usually mostly covered or blackened or whatever, but it's not. The lighting, that's what it is. The light in there, because she's usually out mostly at night or in the dark, to where she didn't see herself in the mirror. And she's a drone. She's designed to lure people in. Part of it, if you notice, a lot of and I'm getting there, don't worry. A lot of the shots are of like her face. When they're talking to her, it's really more, until she gets into the room, we see more of her just from like the shoulders up or whatnot. So like her eyes or whatnot, like she's been designed, the face, to pull the guys in with her smile and her eyes and her personality, and then pull them into the black room so they don't pay attention to the fact that they're being sunk into this black room and going to become food. That's when she starts to disrobe, actually. So what I think happens is kind of she sees herself, and that programming kind of kicks in. And so the whatever allure or whatever tool they use for her eyes to try to make her be able to pull people in, she sees herself as a beautiful person. She's like, oh, it goes with what you're saying, Cara, when she's exploring her body later a little bit more. But I think the first time we actually get her to see in the mirror is that scene where she trips down the stairs or whatnot, and then she looks in the mirror. She gets up close. That's the first time she's actually looking in a mirror. Otherwise, when she's putting on her makeup or whatnot, she's not looking in a mirror. So that's the first time she sees herself.
Well, she sees herself when she's putting on the makeup. I mean, because she is looking in a mirror. Now, whatever the focus, like, I think you're hitting on something there, Mark, and I'm immediately reminded of Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. I want to see her start dancing to weird music and saying, "Do you want to fuck me? Then fuck me."
Except she'd probably be grabbing a lamp and discovering there's something there that she didn't know was there.
Yeah, that was unusual, to where she's getting with this guy who's been nice to her, and she's kind of having an actual intimate moment, like an awakening, and then he actually goes for the full act, and she's like, and she pushes him and is looking down with the light. I'm like,
well, it's because he's into it, and then he kind of stops. I
Yeah.
feel like he almost like hit a wall. Like, this is supposed to go further than it is, and that's then she jumps out of the bed with the
It's like a
lamp.
Barbie. There's like no actual whatever's supposed to be down there, and I'm
see, and
where's the womb?
see, and even in the mirror scene, pardon me, I'm not being a guy. I'm looking at this from a film way, the way it's lighted or whatnot. She's fully nude in front of the mirror, but you're right. I don't think she's anatomically correct below the waist, and I think that's because I was trying to figure out why she reacted like did. She either is anatomically correct or she wasn't, and the guy tried and nothing happened, and she's like, wait, what? I thought I was a woman completely, like from top to bottom, and she wasn't. Cara, how'd you take that? Do you think she was or wasn't?
I mean, I know that she's aware that she's in this shape, but I don't think she's really aware of what she is, because she investigates, like, what is this? What's down there?
Right.
That's why I say she kind of investigates this thing that she didn't even know was there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, because if she's never had to use that before, because she's meant to be just the honeypot, the trap to get the guys into the room so the water or whatever can do the rest of the work. She's never had to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we see her kind of fully naked, the lighting and the use of shadow kind of like very tastefully obscure stuff, so you don't quite see
Everything
down
right,
between. I'm
right.
trying not to be graphic, but
Well, that's what I was
you
trying
get
not
what I'm
to.
saying. Yes,
That's what I'm trying. But and the only reason I'm bringing it up is not because I'm old dude, but
yes,
because it. Okay, well, But no, what I'm saying is that it's a point in the plot, because when that act happens, she reacts, and suddenly next thing we know, we see her trying to roam in the woods all by herself,
Yeah.
getting away from everything, you know. Um, so there's a lot of underneath things that could be going on with her character. Is she or isn't she actually completely built like a human female? Is she not? If she's not, does that make her realize fully what she actually is? And she goes into hiding, so she tries to stay away from people, or the other thing, it's just trying to find herself basically in the woods. And
Well,
then unfortunately things happen.
the fact that even in that sex scene she keeps her shirt on, for all we know, she doesn't even
Mhm.
have memories.
Well, I mean, she does. She gets. We see her topless in a couple of scenes here.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, she's got again.
Well, I had forgotten that, but yeah, you're right.
No, no,
Well,
no,
what I'm
but
thinking, like, if in terms of if we're talking about body parts that are, I'm trying to keep this tasteful. Body
But full
parts that
functioning.
are well that would come in handy when trying to do what her job is.
right.
Having a nice, set of fully realized breasts would be very helpful, because if she had the Barbie thing, kind of like she might down below, even if the guys are seduced when they're getting into the room, they might be like, "What is going on there?" Whereas the part down below is not as important, especially if she's just going to be getting down to her, underwear or
Mhm.
whatever. But yeah, it's what I think is really kind of cool though is, towards the end of the movie when we see her actual form, or even when we realize that she's in, real danger with this logger guy that won't leave her alone and eventually sets her
Mhm.
on fire. We realize that she's an alien, but that doesn't mean like she's an alien like we usually see in these movies where she's got super strength or like eight
Yeah.
hidden arms that can come thrash this guy all over the woods. No, she's very vulnerable. She's just, an employee or a soldier or whatever you want to call it that, is just as susceptible to the harms of dangerous men as anybody else.
Yeah, well, and as far as the way she looks, we eventually see her with the skin off, because the logger guy, in this very very disturbing way it was shot. I mean, it's supposed to get the emotional impact. I was impressed of how they shot it, to where they still get the idea across, even though you don't fully get what I'm saying. They cut away a lot of times in that, and it still has the emotional impact without necessarily being gratuitous, as far as what it actually shows on screen. But he
Mhm.
sees his hands are black. He's like, "What the hell?" And we see her pull the skin off. So what I'm thinking is that her skin had no sensation to it. It was just the skin she wore was literally like her uniform.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
I don't think she had any sensation. So when she's being intimate, and where I was going with this, it kind of goes back to when she's actually finally having her first intimate moment with a guy. Her shirt's on or whatnot, because she doesn't think of it, because it's just like, you're wearing your overalls or what. She has no real feeling. So this is all new, and she doesn't really need to, because there's no feeling there, I don't think. So what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
because she doesn't even realize with the logger guy what he's doing, until she wakes up and she sees what he's doing. It's like, I don't think his feeling her leg woke her. I think she woke, and then she's like, what the hell?
Well, that makes a lot of sense because there's a couple of times that we see her, and I think the bus driver even comments on it because she's, it's Scotland, it's like winter, it's very cold, and yet there are some scenes where she's just walking around in like a pink top with,
Mhm.
jeans, and he's like, "Aren't you cold? You're gonna catch your death. Why don't you put on a coat or something?" What you're saying about this being her uniform makes a lot of sense. To her, that skin she's in might be a parka, because it's completely protecting it's completely covering the black skin that she's got underneath. So she's probably nice and toasty. What I love is when we do see the crack, like we see the slice up her back, but
Mhm.
it's shot in such a way that it almost looks like a hole in the fabric of reality. It's so
Mhm.
black that you're like, it doesn't look like there's something under there. It looks like there's a piece missing from the world. Yeah, it's very, very effective, very creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing that for the first time and thinking to myself, what is that? What happened? But seeing it the second time, I was like, that would have been blood the way he was ripping at her.
Mhm. It could have been, yeah. And you know, and you get that scene too to where she pulls her skin off because he's been so violent with her that he's ripped her basically uniform of the skin of Scarlett. So when she takes off the face part, she turns it around and she's actually looking at herself.
Hmm.
And we see the eyes blink and that,
And
you know.
they're watering, much like the
Mhm.
body we see at the very beginning of the film. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because they 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 get this body for the clothes for her to wear to go out into the world. The bad man does, because the bad man does all the bad things. He eventually kills the disfigured man because the disfigured man ran away. Um, it's hard to say whether or not she let him go or if he was rejected by the black the pool,
That is a
you
mystery
know.
because he goes, I think we see him pretty much submerged, right? Or
Right.
do we? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's the
But
way I understood it, is he went in like once you're there, there's no getting out.
Right.
but
So,
yeah, then we see him running like naked through the field and then hopping the fences. And it's interesting because the bad man knew where to go to pick
mhm.
him up exactly. Like he knew to go to that neighborhood, to that house, smash that car, to pop the trunk, to get the guy coming over the fence. Like there's no way he should have been able to know that.
Well, not necessarily because the guy left his clothes all at the house. So they very well could have got his wallet and his address off his ID and gone there.
My first thought was he sniffed him out.
Or he
Mm.
sniffed them out. The bad man seems to he's he's the soldier. So he's got a little bit different connection than her because, you know, he knows where she's at, I think, almost at all times. Just
And there's a crew of them. There's that one.
there
There's one
is.
shot where we see multiple, bad
Mhm.
men on motorcycles. They're not really brought up again. And again, none of this is explained. It's a delicious mystery. But yeah, he just kind of shows up, and then we see him at the end standing on top of that like mountain, looking up over the mist. It's unclear
Well,
what he knows about what happened to the female.
Mhm.
I don't think he does because I think when she gets the self-realization, and it's of course it's the visual metaphor, folks, that they hit you over the head with. She's driving the van till the van runs out of gas, and she opens it up, and there's this wonderful Scottish fog. Yes, folks, look, she's in a fog, and
Ugh.
she's got a couple different ways she could go back to the van or leave the fog, and she leaves the fog. And once she leaves the fog, she starts exploring herself. She tries to eat because we've never seen her actually eat, and she realizes she can't eat.
Yeah.
It just spits out this delicious chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and then she meets nice guy who lets her know, hey, the bus is coming, and she's walking, she's like processing, going, I guess I'll wait for the bus. You know, because she's got nowhere really to go. Because at this point, you feel like she's very disconnected from whatever hive mind or whatever that, you know, created her at this point. Because the bike guys can't find her. They're finding hints and evidence along the way, but they're not finding her. And even at that end, the guy can't find her at all, probably because she's dead. So he's looking for her, but there's no signal anymore at all because she ended up getting set on fire. Um, this is almost like a reverse rape revenge movie.
Well, not really. I mean, nothing was done wrong to the guy. I mean, he kind of got lured in by her siren effect, and then
Mhm.
he wanted to have his way with her, and then there was that shock reaction, like, "What are you? I don't know what you are, therefore I fear you, so I'm going to kill you."
Right, but I mean, well, what I mean by that is that we see the violent act end up happening to her, um, at the end of the movie. And, at the beginning of the movie, she was luring guys in to become food. I mean, if you look at it from the opposite way, you could turn it to the rape revenge angle of having the bad thing happen to her at the beginning, not get set on fire, but say she gets away out of the woods, and then pretty soon she starts luring the guys into the black ooze as part of to get back at the. I mean, I'm just spinning.
No,
I'm just spinning
I
wheels here,
kind of
but-
get what you're saying, Mark, but I mean, the problem with that is that rape revenge movies are all about intent
True.
to do
Mhm.
like harm and aggression.
And she
In
has
this
no
case,
intent. Yeah.
to her, I mean, she's basically like experimenting with an ant farm. She doesn't know about people. She doesn't really care about people until, later on. It's kind of like if we found out that we could develop the ant is a perfect metaphor because
Mhm.
the body from the beginning, she sees that there's an ant crawling on the corpse. She kind of looks at it like, what if we were able to develop an emotional connection to ants? And then they turned around and set us on fire. But no, I understand what you're saying. She kind of gets a comeuppance that cosmically, I guess, could be seen as, justice for the people that she had helped kill. But I don't think that she is thinking of them as, she's not doing something evil. It's just, she's like making hamburgers or whatever the hell they're doing with that intergalactic organization.
It's just her programming. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what she, and you get, because she doesn't know how to interact with people. She has one purpose. We get that when she's in the club. She's confused by the club. She tries to get out of the club as soon as possible because she's like, I don't know how to be social.
Yeah, it's more like, what is this? What are they doing?
In fairness, that's my reaction whenever I've gone to a club. Like, what am I doing here? I got to get out immediately.
It's past my bedtime already. Hey,
Yes.
one
It's
of the
8 p.m., damn it. No.
One of the things about the nudity, though, is I think part of the nudity that we see her use depends on how willing her victim is. And it seems like she had to get nude, more nude, just enough to pull the guys in who questioned her, because the first guy was just all in. So she didn't even have to get, like, she was down to her underwear, and that guy's like, oh yeah. And then he's like, what the fuck? I'm good. And then, the second guy was a little bit more hesitant, so she disrobed a little bit more. Third guy, we get to the deformed guy. He's still hesitant because he's not sure of her intentions, because he's like, no one has ever interacted with me like a human before. You get that impression anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like he's expecting to end up like Melvin from the Toxic Avenger, just like curtain goes up and everyone's pointing and laughing.
Oh yeah.
So then she has to he's the first one she fully disrobes in front of, like from head to toe, because he's still hesitant, because he's looking back at the door like, until she finally like fully did it. He's like, okay. And then the ooze is like, no, we don't want you on our conveyor. Or she, rescues him, one of the two. But which that's the only point we ever get. And I like movies like this because they aren't holding your hand, but you can kind of fill in the blanks or however you want. We do get one visual, don't we, Kara, of what happens to the insides of the gentleman that get digest, but they're never explaining what that is, do they?
No, that's the interesting part, and I agree with you. Is I don't like being spoon fed. I like kind of making up my own conclusions, and I mean everybody kind of walks away with their own version of the film. And I think that's why I don't really like American films as much.
Western films, more times than not, will hold your hand and feel the need to give you an explanation. That's just the way it is. It's the way the audiences have been groomed over the years, which is probably why this was known, because ScarJo was in it, but a lot of people watched it going, what the fuck?
Yeah. I like that it has rewatchability. Like I noticed a
Mhm.
lot more the second time watching it. I'm sure I'll pick up a lot more each time I rewatch it.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, the fact that it doesn't spoon feed me, that's fine, but just don't don't wear a trench coat and insist that I stick my hand in your pocket.
Wow. No worries. I own a trench coat, but I would never ask that of anyone. Well, except maybe Ian, but
You can ask, but only once, and then we will not be doing shows together again. No,
Uh,
I do want to get back to because something I noticed is I
yeah,
want to get back to that beach scene because I
sure.
forgot that that's like 22 minutes into this movie.
Oh my God.
It's like this is a great way to open your film, first with the eyeball and then the beach. But it's this family of three. It's a husband and wife, their 18-month-old kid, and then the family dog out on this beach. And apparently the dog goes into the water and then is having trouble, so the mom goes in. I noticed the mom, she's still, maybe she was panicked, but she's wearing her heavy ass fur
Yeah,
coat. Like we see her like
yeah.
struggling against the wave. I'm like, what are you doing? And then the dad goes in after, and none of them make it out. Even the surfer that tries to help, he gets, kind of overcome with it. But then the female helps him back to the beach just long enough to bash his head in with a rock.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's terrifying because you see the kid, the little baby, up on the rocks, like when the dad left him to go into the water. And then later at nighttime, when the bad man comes to collect the body of the guy I guess the
Mhm.
remains of the person on the beach, you see that the kid is closer to the shoreline. So he has probably toddled his way back onto the beach. And you're like, oh my God, no, he's going to end up in that water. Then later you hear the
I
news report about the guy was recovered, but his wife and,
kid.
infant
Yeah.
son were missing. And I'm like, oh, my heart still breaks just thinking about it.
High
Because
tides.
the kid's screaming, like,
Mhm.
it's not like, movie baby crying. It sounds like, and I almost don't want to know how they filmed that scene because it sounds like really traumatic for this 1.5-year-old, because that crying goes on and on and on throughout the scene with the radio report. Because I think there's another kid kind of crying in the car next to her, but it's
Mhm.
sort of that melding of the two babies from one scene to the next, but just it's so eerie.
Yeah, I wish horror I wish other horror directors would look at this scene, because this is one of the more scary scenes I've witnessed in a horror film. There's no music, there's no jump scares. The horror comes from how cold her character is throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because, first the dog gets pulled in the riptide, then you witness the wife who's just panicked. The husband goes in after the wife, not thinking of his kid. You all know how this is probably going to end. And she's just staring there observing, and then the surfer guy goes, and you expect, oh, well, maybe it's going to be a happy thing. He's going to be able to rescue, at least the two parents, unfortunately for the dog, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And but then he comes up exhausted, and she moves closer to the action, but she just stands there watching. And then when he comes out exhausted, she literally nonchalantly just comes up, looks at him, looks at the rocks around him, goes like, nah, this is too small. This one, picks it up. Scarlett Johansson's acting in this is wonderful. She just comes
Yeah.
up and she just stares there and she just goes thunk. And it's the way the thunk isn't enhanced. There's no music to this scene. There's just all natural, and it is frightening. It is disturbing. And you're like, this is horrific.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Mark. It doesn't take, all that production or gore or, jump scare stuff. I think something that's missing from a lot of modern horror is the fact that the stuff that really terrifies us, horrifies us, makes us scared, the little things, just the
Yeah.
idea of something happening like to a kid or someone being kidnapped or something like that. Just the idea of something bad happening is enough to send chills down your spine. You don't need the embellishments.
Yeah, I mean, Kara, you're the horror expert for sure. How'd you feel about this whole scene? Would you say it's pretty freaking scary?
I think it was really effective. I mean, the right down to the screaming. I agree with you. Just the natural sounds. I think that. I mean, it didn't occur to me that nothing was enhanced, but just the fact that the natural sounds, and you could see it coming, that the guy was just. I right as you were describing it, I was, and that's kind of like why I was inappropriately giggling. Is I just kind of heard it in my mind as just pow.
Yeah, it's not an embellish; it's a more realistic thunk,
Yeah.
and I think what adds the horror to that versus like the slashers. That, don't get me wrong, I love my slashers and gore fest and everything. I love those type of films, but those films I don't consider as scary. This is actually horrific because we've all been to the beach.
Well,
We've
the,
all
the realism, yeah.
Right. We've all swam in the water when there's higher waves. We all, pretty much most people, I think, know if you go to the beach and water, especially where there's the ocean, there are rip tides. You have to be careful because you can get pulled in and pulled out to sea very quickly.
That happened to me when I was 7.
Ooh.
I was going down. I was in the process of drowning, and my aunt pulled me out of the water at the last second. It's not fun.
No, I can imagine it's not. But I mean, those real world type of scenarios, I think, end up being very more effective than, say, someone getting beheaded by a guy in a hockey mask.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the horror for this comes in. Is it's not really embellished. It's just like you're witnessing this going, oh dear God. I mean, the only part that's embellished is the part where we get the guys seeing them digested, which I'm glad we showed. I don't like getting my handhold, but I like seeing, okay, what does happen with them? Because I
Yeah.
think if you get that, you're spending most of the film going, what's happening to these guys? So at least they show you. So like, here you go. About halfway through, they're like, this is what happens. Quit thinking about it now.
Yeah, they throw you a little crumb.
Right.
Well, and also, just the one guy that, reaches out and holds the hand of the other guy right before he pops. I mean, it's unclear what exactly is going on. You don't know if he's feeling pain or if it's just the psychological pain of, I'm just going to be down here in this formaldehyde or whatever. Because you do get that kind of feeling, because
Yeah.
the one guy that he's reaching out to, his body is distorted, but it's not completely gross. It's like kind of, the skin is pulled in different parts, but there is some kind of sentience in there because it does reach out for him. So he's probably sitting there wondering, is this going to happen to me? How long am I going to be down here? Because I'm still apparently alive. I'm not having trouble breathing, but just the terror of it. And we don't see what happens to that guy. He's probably just still hanging out down there for however long.
Right. Until his skin comes loose enough, because I think that's why they're soaking. They're like soaking to loosen up the skin, and then their insides get sucked out, put on a conveyor, and get shoved into some kind of engine that, again, don't get really an answer. You just get the idea that there is a being out there using these people like drones and soldiers to lure lonely folks in to digest them to survive.
It's or it's the flesh farms like in the Terminator movies. That's what
Oh,
they
there's
use
that.
to
Yeah.
grow the skin. They're
Mhm.
recycling the body parts to make the skin for their alien
Oh,
drones.
yeah. They're using the skin to make their drones. Absolutely. You could, they don't waste not, want not, right? You don't.
Yes.
One of the interesting facts about this film, I always love this trivia, and this is fitting from what we were talked about, bringing it back around to what we talked about at the beginning of the movie, is Scarlett Johansson was an indie, face, but not really a big, like her face wasn't like plastered all over billboards or whatnot. Apparently, the guys that she picks up in the van scenes were real guys. They weren't actors, and at first. Apparently, according to trivia, the men lured into the van by ScarJo's character were not actors. Jonathan Glazer had hidden cameras installed in the van and only informed the men afterwards that they were in a movie.
Yeah.
That's some real taxi cab confession shit. I like that.
which, you know, it explains their more common guy look. He didn't want to use, and then the Adam Pearson is the gentleman's name, the one who plays the disfigured man. Apparently, the guy broke his leg on the way to the audition. He got struck by a car. So he
Ooh.
did his audition for Glazer. He went to the hospital and gave him the job, which was through, I guess there's a organization called team called Contacted Changing Faces, a charity supporting people with facial disfigurements. And they hired him, and he gave Adam Pearson gave ideas of how Scarlett Johansson was going to seduce his character, and they worked
I'm
that
sure
into
he
the
did.
script. But took 10 years to make altogether. That's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah. Which again, if it was early, even as she was the indie darling in that, if she was shooting this early, you know, even, you know, 8 years prior or whenever they actually shot her scenes, people wouldn't know who she was. You know, not now. Scarlett Johansson pulls up into a van all dressed up kind of, you know, like she was, and just goes, "Would you like to come in?" Almost, you know, you're going to get all kinds of people going, "Yeah, okay, yeah." There's Scarlett Johansson.
It's the Borat effect. Like
It's the Borat.
you could do that, you know, 20 years ago, but now
Yeah.
Sacha Baron Cohen goes anywhere and it's like, nope.
But yeah, it's an interesting film. There is a trailer, and to get to the trailer before we get to our final thoughts with this, was the trailer truth or trailer trash, Kara?
I'm not going to call it trash, but it was definitely a fib, in my opinion.
How so?
I mean, it's definitely a study, but at least in my opinion, the way I read into it is they call it like some exploratory of human discovery or human nature, and I mean, I don't consider it like a true eye opener the way it was depicted in the trailer, and maybe I just misread that. I mean, I didn't walk out away from it with like some true experience, like, oh, I've had like some revelation or some epiphany or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, I could see that. What about you, Ian? Would you say the trailer tells the truth, or is it trash?
I think it tells the truth. It's tricky when you're watching trailers like this that have the critic blurbs interspersed, because you got to separate that from the story that the trailer is trying to sell. And I understand what you're saying, Kara, because especially when it comes to like blurbs from critics, like it changed my life. It was mind blowing. I've never thought of this before. I'm like, well, you need to get out more because because everybody's different. But no, I mean,
It was so mind blowing. I changed my underpants.
I discovered there was nothing down there. Weird. I'm an
Wow.
alien. No, but I think it's unfortunate because it does tell the truth. It does sell the movie that, you know, it's trying to sell. But unfortunately, like the eyeball thing is like right there, and some of the music choices, and you don't really have the context for the fiery thing at the end, but like the very end of the movie is right there. There's all
Yeah.
these things that like I would rather someone, you know, just if you just have a picture of Scarlett Johansson like driving and picking up random men with that score, and
Yeah.
then just say Under the Skin. Don't even tell anybody that it's about aliens or weird black water. That's great because I want to discover all this stuff. I don't think I ever watched the trailer for this movie before I saw it in the theaters. My friend had just told me about it. And that's the perfect way to do it, because any visual spoiler in this movie is going to rob you of the experience.
Yeah, and you're right about the score. The score is very effective. It's sparse,
Yeah.
but when it's used, it's very dissonant and disturbing, and you're just like, "Oh, crap's gonna go down." It's like-
Yeah, I mean, it looks artsy. It looks very interesting. I'll give it that. And I think that's probably where I went wrong, is I was definitely paying more attention to what was said about the film than actually watching
Oh,
the trailer.
yeah. No, I could see that because I was watching the text too, and that's where I was like, "There's like this erotic experience." I'm like, there, Did you watch the same movie I did? Because
It's not cat people.
yeah. One final little trivia is one hypothesis suggests the female is called a Selkie instead of an alien. Selkies are mythological creatures found in Scotland, Irish, and Icelandic folklore. They are said to live as seals in the sea, but their skin becomes human on land. Selkies are described as being very beautiful in their human form and therefore great seductive powers. So I'm wondering if that was influence. Not saying that that's completely, but maybe that idea is what influenced this movie. And the
I
book.
don't know, but what I want there to be a nationwide prank where all the theaters showing Little Mermaid remake next week swap in Under the Skin.
Under the sea. I mean,
Under the Skin.
Oh God, I saw her more as a siren because she was leading
Yeah.
men to their death.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Wow. Now that song's got a whole new meaning now. Thank you.
Yeah, I got that too. I kind of heard that at the beginning when you were introducing the film.
Oh my God.
I mean,
okay.
it kind of fits too down here where it's wetter, and I'm like under that glass.
Things are
Yes.
better down where it's wetter. Take it from me. Out on the street, you sweat all day. Under the blackness, you fade away.
Look, I just want someone to
spoke
recut the
itself.
trailer for this movie with Under the Sea. I don't care which version. I think it would
It's
line up.
probably out there somewhere.
If not, it should be. Harry Mouse Internet, do it. Do it now. Do it now. Okay.
And and to go along with the controversy of the new movie, our new heroine Under the Sea is also black.
Yeah, well,
ultimately,
yeah.
like
There
Under
you
the
go.
Skin.
Yeah.
Technically, she is, yeah.
Yeah, technically. Technically, yeah.
And she does have red hair.
She does. Oh, look at that. We're trying more and more. Before we get Disney to shut us down, a final thought, Ian, with Under the Skin, would you recommend it?
I would. And if this gets any kind of a retrospective or, special art house screening somewhere, definitely go see it in a movie theater. Because the visuals are stunning, the audio landscape, including that score, just magnificent. I think it's a great movie and kind of an underrated, a deceptively complex performance from Scarlett Johansson because it's just like she's walking around, she's kind of looking, dead-eyed. She doesn't do a whole lot. She does a lot. And one thing I hadn't picked up in the beginning with the whole eyeball thing, you hear this really weird, distorted like voice. And I realized for the first time, like that's her learning to talk and to enunciate. And it's so creepy, but very effective. And it just adds to this, mystery of this story that's being told. I love this movie.
I was trying to figure out what that was.
Yeah, it dawned on me the first time. Yeah. Well, and those are like, I think some of those were even like, because I used to have some, I have some actor friends, like exercises you do for when you want to enunciate. You do those type of exercises with the fa, v, all
warming
that.
up the voice.
Yeah, exactly. Kara, what's your final thought with Under the Skin?
I like it. I want to say it's, I don't know if you would agree with me, but subtly complex. Like it's not as simple a story as it seems. It does have that rewatchability. It's maybe not a film that you can pick up like one of those, oh, this is my go-to movie, but it's definitely something you can sit and watch maybe once every few months, or it's one of those fun films that you can introduce to somebody like, hey, check out this.
Yeah, especially like people who only know Scarlett Johansson from the Marvel movies. Like, she can also do this. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, oh, you like her big juicy butt, check this one out.
I think that was the tagline on the poster initially, but They threw that out because they didn't want to offend anyone. So there's a take. If you like ScarJo's big juicy butt, come see Under the Skin. Now showing at theaters exclusively.
No, that's showing exclusively on Mr. Skin.
Mr.
Oh gosh.
And I would recommend this film too. I dig it a lot more. I think I dig it a lot more now than when I first watched it, but it's one of
Yeah.
those films where if someone hasn't seen it, this is one of those great films where you take that person, you sit with them and you watch it with them. And then at the end you discuss things
Yes.
because it's one of those films where it would be fun to watch it with someone who hasn't seen it before and just see their reactions for the first time after you know what's going on. But you're right, it's subtly complex. If you take it just for what it's like, you're like, well, there's not much dialogue and she's just walking around and in it. And you're like, yeah, but pay attention a little bit more of what's going on. It's nuanced cinema, which you don't get a lot of, especially nowadays. And that's why I enjoy it. I always love films that don't get too complex, yet they're trying to say a lot. And I think this film does. I highly recommend it too. So there you go, folks. 3 recommendations for this. And now it is a perfect 10 episode. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, we get to spin the wheel of random. Yes,
The Wheel of Erotica.
No, that's for a different show, Kara. But now you gave me the idea, so maybe next year's special, we'll see. Anyway, we'll look at erotic cinema.
It's another skin episode.
No, it'll be the soft core room. That'll be the 2024 theme.
Let's see, there's 52 weeks in the year. Every week we look at a different Emmanuel movie. There we go. There you go. We'll probably hit them all. We'll go in chronological order too, and then it branches off on if there's sequels or not. Anyway.
gotta have a Shannon Tweed month in there somewhere.
There you go. But we're back now to the Wheel of Random. Let's see what we're going to cover next month. Round and around and around she goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. And we get... Oh! And there it is, folks. Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters.
Nice.
A movie that I did not care for when it first came out.
Oh, it's fine.
That's why I'm looking forward to revisiting it, because I didn't care for it the first time around.
I don't know if I've seen that movie. I might have seen it and forgotten about it, but yeah.
Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters is definitely an interesting film. Yeah, so now I'm gonna have to come up with a theme for, maybe we'll just do all Hansel and Gretel movies next month.
Hansel and Gretel get baked. Yes,
there you go. So there you go, folks. That's our perfect 10 episode for next month. Will be Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. Look to specialmarkproductions.com for our schedule when I come up with a theme based around that movie. And now, as always, hashtag license to shill to my wonderful guests here. Ian, you go first this time and change of pace. What do you got to shill?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my other mashup idea besides the whole Little Mermaid thing. Yeah. I want to see, because this movie takes place in Scotland, I want to see a mix of Under the Skin and Train Spotting. She's just driving through Edinburgh, picking up Sick Boy and Renton and Begbie. What happens to them?
Wow.
I would love to see a mashup of the diarrhea skin and the skin getting peeled off.
Yes. Look, Skin Spotting. Someone make it. Okay.
Skin Spotting.
I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel. Just look on YouTube under Kicking the Seat. I do interviews and movie reviews and roundtables. And this Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Central, going to be talking about Superman 1978. Revisiting a classic. And next week, also at Wednesday, we're going to be at Wednesday. We're going to be doing Superman 2 comparison of the original cut and the Donner cut. So yeah, a lot of good stuff to look forward to.
It's
And I'm
all,
also here every Monday night.
it's all part of this release that is coming out or is out now, the 4K release of Superman. That has inspired that. I probably won't make this Wednesday, but maybe next Wednesday. So we'll see.
All right.
And Kara, please shill away. What do you got?
I have an unboxing video, Blind Bag. Which
Ooh,
should be out tomorrow. Black Craft Cult, if anybody's into blind bags or just counterculture clothing type stuff. But that'll be on my channel, same as my handle name right there, Horror Retrospective. But that's the only current thing that I have. And I'm also live streaming on Saturdays, 2:00 Central Time.
awesome stuff. Check out both these fine folks' material because it is wonderful. And if you're at all curious, specialmarkproductions.com for all your movie man needs. We got all our stuff there. I've got an interview with a filmmaker for a movie I reviewed last week, Mickey Hardaway, Marcellus Cox. I'm going to be talking to him this week, so look for that interview. And I've got another interview possibly lined up next week for a gentleman who made the documentary The Mom and Dad Nipple Factory, which is it is a documentary about his parents who ended up designing nipples that are used for women who've had mastectomies. So it was a fascinating documentary, and I didn't like it just because it was set in Wisconsin, though it did happen in Wisconsin. So woohoo, Wisconsin represent the same state that brings you old brandy old fashions in a can. Also has some really other things to offer. So a lot of great stuff coming up on the channel. Please subscribe to us here on the Spoiler Room because you'll want to see what I come up with for next month. I don't know yet, based off of this movie, but I thank each and every one of you. Yeah. Oh, I also got to plug Astro Radio Z soon. Will have an episode that is long awaited. It took me way too long to edit it, but we got the bottom rack crew back together to do a special episode of an asylum movie that came out a little while ago. We didn't know. And so you're going to want to check out Astro Radio Z, I believe. I'm not sure when Derek's going to be posting it, but there's a little tease there. So thank you so much, folks. And I would just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good evening.
Good evening and good night.